Oke, udah.
Tuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, today we will discuss about how to be a critical speaking and critical listening. So, my name is Akira, and we're going to the first slide. Critical speaking. The speaking ability was influenced by critical thinking. Critical speaking is related with how people can build critical thinking, and critical thinking is a high ability of thinking with some indicators, such as being able to recognize problems, finding solutions of existing problems, collecting and compiling necessary information, recognizing assumptions, logical thinking, distinguishing factual and non-factual names, evaluating expressing true conclusion from existing data. Next is, what is critical speaking? Basically, has some components such as grammar, pronunciation, content, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Those are some aspects that should be prepared to produce good speaking. But good speaking is not enough to become critical speaking. Speaker has the critical thinking abilities such as getting some ideas, understanding some sentences, reasoning for some ideas and problems, analyzing, exploring, and concluding some sentences. Next, how to be a critical speaker. 1. Keeping an open mind to cultural differences. When considering both gender and cultural contexts, we often encounter bias, both intentional and unintentional, and implicit or explicit. We may have presumptive judgments or opinions about those cultures and races that differ from our own. Often, the results of our own cultural and genders upbringings. Number 2 is the message. No matter which model of communication you study, every mode includes the most important element of all, the message. You can't have communication without a message. The word message actually comes from the Latin mittere, or the mean is to send. And number 3 is situational and environmental context. Situational context refers to actual reason for why you are speaking or presenting, the manner in which you deliver for your speech, from the words you want to say to how you say them, relies on the situational context. An environmental context refers to the physical space in which you are speaking. Environmental context also can affect the degree to which the audience feels they can connect with you. And next is informative speeches. The speaker relays knowledge to an audience on a specific topic. There are 4 distinct types of informative speeches. Number 1 is speeches about object. Number 2, speech about processes. Number 3, speeches about events. And number 4, the last, is speeches about concept. And the last is number 5, noise and interference. Noise may be jarring and unpleasant, and is usually an interruption or distraction when it occurs. Noise and interference block the sending or receiving of a message. With regard to external noise, double check to see if there are in ways to boost your volume. You might need to physically project your voice a little more to be heard over a low gain. You might even need to call attention to yourself so that your audience pays attention. Number 6 is feedback, visual and verbal cues. Verbal and visual cues refer to those sounds and reactions you may hear and see made by your audience. Feedback loop of immediate audience reaction plays out in real time as you speak. You get that instant feedback on how you may need to correct course and positions potentially different from your script approach in order to make that connection with your audience. So that is the step how to be a critical speaker. So next is we're going to what is critical listening.
Okay, now we go to the next material is the how to be a critical listening. The first one, I will explain what is critical listening. Critical listening is a process with a listener goes through using careful, systematic thinking and reasoning to see whether a message makes sense in light of the factual evidence. Critical listening can be learned with practice, but is not necessarily easy to do. The problem occurs when messages are repeated to others who haven't yet developed skills to discern the difference between a valid message and mistakes. Critical listening can be particularly difficult when the message is complex, but unfortunately, some speakers may make their message intentionally complex to avoid critical scrutiny. Now, there are so many ways to improve critical listening. There are 7 points, and I will explain it briefly. The first one is recognizing the difference between fact and opinions. Part of this critical listening is learning to separate opinions from facts, and this work has 2 ways. The first one is critical listeners are aware of whether a speaker is delivering a factual message or a message based on opinion. And second, critical listeners are also aware of interplay between their own opinions and the fact as they listen to message. Second is uncovering assumption. If something is factual, supporting evidence exists. However, we still need to be careful about what evidence does and does not mean. And for the assumption, are gaps in a logical sequence that listeners passively build their own ideas and opinions and might or may not be accurate. The third is be open to new ideas. Sometimes people are so fully invested in their perception of the world that they are unable to listen receptively to messages that make sense and would be of great benefit to them. Human progress has been possible. And then the part is rely on reason and common sense. If you're listening to speech and your common sense tell you that the message is illogical, you very well might be right. You should be thinking about whether the speech sounds credible and coherent. In this way, your use of common sense and can act warning system for you. And if the message is inconsistent with things that you already know, or if the argument is illogical or the language is exaggerated, you should investigate the issues before accepting or rejecting the message. And then related new ideas to what one. As both a speaker and listener, one of the most important things that you can do to understand a message is to relate new ideas to previously ideas. And if you can make effective comparison while you're listening, it can deepen your understanding of the message. If you can provide this comparison for your listener, you make it easier for them to give consideration to your ideas. And then is taking notes. Taking notes is a skill that improves with practice. In attempt to record everything, you might fall behind and wish we had divided your attention differently between writing and listening. For the last one is give a honest feedback. Give a honest feedback. After the speakers went up, give him or her honest feedback. Show them that you understand their feeling. This assures the speaking that you are a good listener. Moreover, take notes. Take notes while hearing the conversation. It will help the assessing your understanding and it acknowledging any incomplete information. And also, while giving feedback, that summary only the points that were mentioned. This will help in help this will help in avoiding any confusion while making decision. Okay, that's all for me. And then the next.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Intan Amaria Andini. I would love to talk about so the previous speakers already talk about critical speaking and critical listening. So now I would love to talk about the content. So how to know that what we hear is a valid argument, or when we speak only valid arguments, that it is only tell the truth, or at least it's something that is um, acceptable. So critical thinking is the key to defend arguments against logical attack. So when we do critical listening, for example, we don't just accept everything that is said to us that we just hear, but we analyze, we criticize, we evaluate, and we filter. So um, this picture that you can see on the screen is the model to generate critical thinking. So to be a critical person when you speak or when you listen, you need to use this kind of information. So to be critical, we need to educate ourselves first. We need to have knowledge so that we can compare um, what we already know and what we just heard. For example, um, we hear a person from a Islamic organization said that Indonesia need, for example, Khilafah to be a better nation. So, or what is the topic that this person say about Khilafah? And then we need to compare what he said with what we already know. Um, what we already know, and then um, the way these person say it, in what tone that he used. The term Hilafah, what we know about Hilafah, and when we heard about it before, or when we read about it before, and who talk about it, and then when the idea of Khilafah is accepted, and then we kind of describe it to ourselves, and then we analyze it, why the person said so, and then we try to evaluate whether the arguments or the contents that someone said is something acceptable or not. Mm, can you move on to the next slide, please? Betty? Oh, yeah. Okay. So again, this is the notions that I took from analyzing, speaking, and listening text, the ebook that Ma'am Eros shared on page 118. So um, when we speak or when we listen critically, we may need to use these forms, or we can use these questions as a checklist. For example, in terms of language function, what is the purpose of the spoken language? Why we say it? Or if we listen to it, what is the purpose that speaker said that notion? And then what is the topic? What form of language that they use? And then when we already heard about this topic before, what we already know, and what is the new information that we get after we listen to that, and then the idea presented, is it fact or opinion, and we're going to talk about it later, of course, and then what is included, and then what is the information that is left out, and then let me just skip, you can read it yourself, but after that we need to compare what we already know and what the speaker is said, or of course that in terms of critical speaking as well, we need to think about the situational context and cultural context, which I assume already explained by the previous speakers. When we listen to, for example, to a speech, how to be aware, because when someone's speaking convincingly, it's not always equal to that they speak intelligently, or when they speak convincingly, it doesn't necessarily means that they speak the truth. So we need to use critical thinking. We need to always filter what we hear, and we always have to filter also what we speak when we communicate with others. Next, please. Okay, so but somehow, sometimes we see people mumble, or it's when people speak like a parrot. They speak convincingly, but actually they do not know what they speak. They do not understand what they speak, so they just hear it from somewhere, and then they told you what they hear, but the way they speak is convincing, and you think like that might be the truth, but actually not. So, the next slide, please. So this is what we can do to encounter an argument without an argument. The solution is, if you think that you cannot counter that person's argument with your own arguments, you can ask an open-ended question. Open-ended question is a question that demanded answer, that is not just a yes or no, but an explanation. For example, people say Indonesia need Khilafah to be a better nation. We can ask him, what is Khilafah? What do you know about Khilafah? And then how, not just why we need Khilafah, but how can Khilafah save our nation? So, because when you ask the open-ended question, the speaker would have to think or rethink again, to analyze again whether what he speak is something valid or not, and then you know that is he just memorize the speech and then retell it to you, or is it something that he really understands and what he say is something valid? I guess that's all I can say. Thank you very much. We can have the question and answer session, please. So first question.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I want to ask, the material critical speaker, how does the mean of noise and interference include in way to be critical speaker? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I want to answer Mbak Reni's question. How does the mean of noise and interference include in way to be critical speaker? So basically, the more accurate meaning is volume, because sound is one of the ways that it can be used to communicate a thing. When a noise and interference occurs, speakers may increase the volume to be heard below the noises and also attract attention so the audience can pay attention. Bisa dipahami, Mbak? We can go for the next question. Okay. Thank you for
Okay.
asking.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thanks for all presenters. My name is Risabti Marani. I want to ask, in your opinion, what is the importance of taking notes when we do listening? Please explain. Thank you.
Thank you for Melissa for question. Um, I will answer the question. Taking notes is officially very important. The important is engage your mind. It means you're listening carefully and deciding what to include in notes. Keep your mind actively involved in what you heard. And then, as the you notes, you will decide on and highlight the key ideas in your head, identifying the structure of class presentation, and you will also be able to indicate supporting points from the presentation. Maybe that's all from me.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Betty.
Okay, next question, please. If you have any.
I wanna ask in the part of slide the K of given argument against logical attack
Mm-hmm.
in part language function and language feature.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain explain more, Mbak?
Uh-huh. Like all of them? Oh, okay.
No, just on language feature and language function.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so let me explain it again. Not again. Let me explain about it. So, for example, mm, when we speak, when we speak in critical speaking, then we need to pay attention on this language function, or when we listen to it. So when we speak, for example, uh, why we say about this topic, why we speak about this topic, what is this topic, and then we also need to know about our audience. Is this the topic that we propose, that we bring, is something that they would accept? Is it something that they would agree? So, for example, if we just want to talk about gossip, so critical speaking and critical listening is not just about speeches actually. It's not just when we listen to a seminar, a webinar, a speech, but also when we speak to our friends during lunch break. We know, for example, we can also practice this uh, critical listening and critical speaking. If we want to talk about political things, the um, topic, for example, and then we talk with our friends who don't really have any interest in politics, then that was not wise. So we're not being a critical speaker. Or when we listen to something as a listener, we can filter, is it just a gossip or is it something that is educative? If it's just a gossip, if it's just an opinion, it is not based on a valid argument, you're not talking about something scientific, there's no graph, there's no survey, there's no expert noted, or what experts say noted in that conversation, that we can just say that we don't have to take it seriously because you're not talking about something scientific. It's just a mere a mere a conversation that you have with your friends. And then when we listen to a topic, when someone says something, we need to filter. So this is the difference between just listening with critical listening. That there's a process of filter, menyaring. So what we have already know about the topic. So when we filter, when we do the critical listening, of course that we have to be intelligent first. we need to have the knowledge first about that topic. If not, then when we listen, we just accept all the information. There's no such a process of analyzing, of filtering, of evaluating. So when we do the critical listening, we need to know the knowledge first. That goes the same with critical speaking. So when we speak, what we say, is it something that is a fact or just an opinion? But we need to know the context first. In a formal context, when we talk about scientific context, when we speak to, for example, our lecturers, an audience who is intellectuals, then and when we discuss about scientific things, then we need to talk about something that is provable, that can be proved, and then there's a strong or a valid logical behind that, and that we have an evidence to support our arguments, and stuff like that. If I have to explain about all of this, and then for example, when we listen to an Islamic preach, sometimes we need to know that who would agree with that, with what is being said. For example, I heard one of our friends in Tibik said that LGBT group are people who conduct sinful actions, and then our religion told us to punish them by burning them alive. So LGBT people need to be burned alive. Who would agree with that? Of course, only person or people with extreme ideas or who believe in radicalism would agree with that. I don't believe in radicalism, so I wouldn't agree with that. So that's the same if I want to talk about this issue. It's a very sensitive issue, whether my listener would agree with that or not. And then you can tell about the speaker's attitude. When we listen to somebody, we need to also see what is his background, what is his bias, his attitude, his value. We're listening to people who preach about Islamic teaching, but if this cleric is a person who say lonte, for example, just a case from a few days or a few weeks ago, a cleric who say the word lonte 8 times in 2 minutes, would you believe in that person represented the true teachings of Islam? So I guess you can judge yourself. Okay, and then the language features. Maybe I do not have time to explain all of that, but when we use a vocabulary to describe our argument, for example, I was in a debating championship before, and then we talk about the conjugal rights for prisoners. Conjugal rights is the right that given to prisoners for having sex with their marital partner. And then we counter the arguments with, what if we don't give the conjugal rights to prisoners? They would be, because our nature, we need sexual relief. If we don't give these prisoners a right to have sex with their marital partner, there would be a possibility that they would do it with their, for example, cellmates, with their mates in the prisoner. But the prison is always divided into male prisons and female prisons. So all the prisoners are male or all prisoners are female. And if it was in the male prisoners, there would be a possibility that these male prisoners would do the sexual activities with another male counterpart. And if male-to-male sexual activities or intercourse could cause a HIV/AIDS. So, but a person in that debate championship don't use the word lesbian gay or gay intercourse could cause HIV/AIDS. He used the word LGBT, but actually, on that conjugal rights notion, we just talk about that gay when we give the example. So the term LGBT is not the correct vocabulary to be used when we speak a debate or when we deliver a debate. That makes the arguments less valid just because the words LGBT instead of gay. I hope that can be explained it. Okay. So anybody wants to give their rebut, wants to rebut our arguments, or you want to give additional comments towards the discussion?
No.
Things no in
No, I mean pandangan umum. Anybody wants to? You said that you already prepare some text. Okay.
Okay. I would like to add a little addition to the material critical speaker. In my opinion, how to be critical speaker also need proclaim the fact, data, or opinion of other on what's presented by person. Because fact, data, or opinion from other, it can make strangeness the subject, but critical speaker must also be able to issue their opinion self. Because if a speaker who merely convey a quotation or opinion from other person, what's presented will be morely a complete compilation. I mean. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Reni.
Thank you, Mbak Reni.
You're welcome.
Mbak Lisa, maybe would you like to give additional comments?
Aku nambahin yang waktu Mbak Betty itu ya jawab.
Yes, please.
Okay, with pleasure, please.
Okay, I want to addition the answer Mbak Betty. In my opinion, the importance of taking notes first because we note something important information when we heard so we don't forget. And the second, to avoid misunderstanding someone message. And the last, I think can create effective communication where we can understand what other people say. Okay, thank you. That's all enough for me.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Lisa.
Thank you, Mbak Lisa.
Welcome for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam
Warahmatullahi
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.